Welcome to part 2 of our Cannondale scalpel build. If you haven't seen part 1 already, I'll link it down below. Part 1, we got the project in, and we'll show you all the sort of the visual inspection we gave it and gave the customer an outline quote of what we thought it might cost. The next part of this is to then go a little bit deeper and actually start putting some time and some labor into it to make sure that what we're about to repair, we're not going to uncover any nasty surprises. Basically a validity study. What I really want to be careful of is, are we going to strip any of the threads on these bolts and that sort of thing as we go. So where I've got to so far, everything has been sat in a whole load of penetrated oil and anti-rust before I even took a bolt to it, because all these pivots were absolutely jam solid. So this little swing arm here, for instance, this was an absolute pig to remove. And in fact, after sort of removing quite a lot of this, there is actually a little crack here. Now, this is really frustrating. But the crazy thing about this is a 90 quid component to replace, but it comes with the bearings, which are like 10 quid each. So it's not actually as bad as you might think. So that's okay. You can kind of see why, because this is the pivot that came out of it. This is completely jammed in. What's left of this side outer race is still well and truly wedged in there. The inner race has got itself wedged well and truly inside there somewhere, and all basically the bearings just completely fell out. So this has been experiencing forces that it wasn't expecting to. The top one here, this actually came out okay. And the bottom one actually came out okay as well. Now, if you're ever doing this at home, what you've got to look out for is when you're unthreading bolts, is that one side can get jammed in. So when you're unthreading the bolts, you'll find that the actual stays are sort of splitting themselves apart like this. So as you unthread one side, you'll notice this side come out and out. So the important thing is to go back in every now and then, just knock it back in to make sure that the actual thread's coming out and you're not just prying the rear stays open. That's what was happening down here. So bit by bit, you undo it a little bit, come back, bit more penetrating oil, tap, 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 equal it out, another thread. And also I couldn't just go in there and just undo it with loads of force. The important thing is I've got it moving like 1/8 of a turn, just going backwards and forwards on 1/8 of a turn. And then it'll go a little bit more, another 1/8 of a turn, a little bit backwards and forwards, knock it through. It's a real labor intensive process, but you get there in the end. It's a nice, safe way to do it. So where we're up to now is we've got that out. We need to remove this, and then we can take that rear stay off and have a good look at these frame bearings. So let's do that first, and then we'll come back to all the various suspension bits and pieces. That is in one hell of a state. So I think we can agree we are definitely going to need a new pivot bolt kit. So with Cannondale pivots, you actually get two parts. You get this sort of main pivot, and then another piece either goes in and then sort of locks in. So you have to be sort of careful to sort of remove this bit. This bit expands and sort of captures the threads. But these can actually be really, really hard to remove. And you get like little cups on the smaller ones held in with bolts. So you'll see like a little Torx bolt. And then behind that, there's like a little 4mm that you can just use to help sort of lever it out. And then behind that, there'll then be a 6mm that you can then actually use to screw it. However, all of that just gets completely seized up. So always good fun. Again, with all of this, you just got to go slowly, slowly with it. There we go. Oh, look at that. So these are the bits we need to uncover and see if we can see any sort of cracks or any sort of major cause or concern. There's obviously some paint damage where sort of the corrosion has got to the aluminium parts and just lifted the paint. So we will probably go back in that and just touch that up with some plain black paint. So the only two bears we need to really worry about are these two down here, and they are tiny. Remember we said in the first one, it's like looking after a British sports car. Well, this is what I mean. Like normally on a mountain bike, these are quite big, beefy bearings, but here they are super tiny, completely inadequate for the job, but they are lightweight. And that, when you're buying a race bike, matters more than durability. So they should tap out okay. Before we get into that, let me talk you through another few bits and pieces. And that is, first of all, the shock, remember. Now, the shock was making me very nervous. So what we've done here is we've just removed the air can. And I wanted to do that because I wanted to be really certain that this air sleeve was in really good condition. So this is all looking absolutely fantastic. And this area around here, which I was really worried about corroding. So I've taken the little white pip out, and you can now see there's a little black hole in the middle. So it's actually a hole that goes through. So we can actually go ahead and remove that pressure. Yeah, there's not an awful lot of pressure left in there. That should normally hiss. The bit that I'm nervous about with this really is whether this corrosion has seeped any further than just this. And when we replace the bolt, we have an issue. If you want to make sure that all the pressure's gone, just turn the compression damping on and that should now squelch. That tells you that all the pressure's gone. And there we go, you can see that is what I was worried about. But underneath all that surface rust, actually is really clean in there. So I think we've got a fair bit of confidence we can save this rear shock. The biggest concern of that was really that the little compression ring, which is the blue ring you can see, this grub screw just won't stay in. It's corroded so much that the blue grub screw just won't stay in place. So we have all those parts on the way. Okay, the bottom bracket area. Now, the bottom bracket on this is a pain because there really isn't any sort of outer surface you can get a tool on there to extract it with a thread. So you sort of have to resort to using a headset removing tool like this, and you really make sure you put this through and get behind the actual metal part. So inside the frame, what will happen is that this will ping out, and the very first ping you'll see, it actually engages on the metal bearing. You don't want that because then it will just pull the whole bearing out rather than this whole metal sheath. So you need to sort of go the next sort of click and it will sit like that inside the frame, and then you've got something solid you can tap against. Now, this isn't taking big sledgehammer hammer blows. It isn't. It is tap, 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 tap. Spray some more penetrating oil. Tap, 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 tap. Spray some more penetrating oil. Bring it out slowly. Take your time, and that way you don't really risk damaging too much. What's left inside here actually all looks very, very good. The next thing we need to do is have a really, really close visual inspection. Make sure there's no sort of cracks or concerns around the frame. Make sure we've got something to work with. I also want to have a closer look at some of our componentry. So if you remember from the first video, we talked about this SRAM dub. We've given this a right good clean up now. We've still got some polishing to do. Polishing is probably one of the best things you can do for corrosion. So we'll get in there with some like mother's mag and sand all this corrosion off. Once corrosion starts, it will just keep going. This under rotation you can see here, it hasn't actually gone much further past than the anodizing. I can run my fingernail across that and I can't feel a groove. I've caught this just at the right time, so I'm happy to reuse this. The chain rings are absolute toast. The customer lives somewhere really flat and they've actually asked for a 36 tooth chain ring. SRAM only made the 36 tooth chain ring in the super light version of this, which is like 130 quid. However, the Unite components, so we're going to get the Unite components one, which is about 60 quid I think, and that'll go up to a 36 tooth. That's all good. The brakes and everything else is scrubbed up okay. The customer himself has found a really good deal on an Eagle cassette and an Eagle chain, so that's not for us to worry about. And we've got those forks on the way. So talking of forks, we did want to talk about that Lefty. So loads of you came up with the, why don't you service it? Well, there's only really one place in the UK for non-Cannondale dealers to access Cannondale parts, and that is Cannondale Spares, and they sell the entire range that's available to the UK. There is a company in America called Dr. Cannondale. They used to be able to ship parts to the UK, but they no longer ship parts to the UK. Please, if anyone knows where you can get Lefty, proper Lefty parts, not the one on Cannondale Spares, which is like the external parts, I mean the actual damper components, we would love to know about it. Right, let's take a look at this Lefty. Welcome to the suspension room. For those who haven't been here before, we don't come in here too often. So this is the Lefty Ocho fork. We've removed the damper. Now, Lefties are always renowned for being incredibly stiff. They don't look like they should be because it's like just a prong, right? But it actually works on a square and a square with bearings in here. So the Ocho actually had 3, so normally a Lefty would have 4 like a cube. These actually just had 3 like a triangle rows of cylindrical bearings that allow this to travel up and down. Now this doesn't feel that bad, I've heard a lot worse, but my biggest thing with this is one, this bottom seal definitely needs replacing. I don't think we're ever going to get a really, really good fit with it. One of the problems with this is that because it's upside down, everything leaks, and these are renowned for leaking oil onto your disc rotors and just generally causing a whole bunch of problems, to be honest. So that needs to be replaced. Now, the problem with Lefties is that okay, it's really, really hard to obtain parts, but they're also really expensive. So this part here, this is just the top cap, and you can see how this is corroded. Now, this is actually really important because this needs a really good frictionless experience for that remote lockout to work. All of these components here need to be able to spin in here freely. Now this is 45 euros. Just to give you an idea of how bonkers expensive Lefty parts are. A seal kit for this is probably about the same as a Fox one or something. It's about 30 euros. Oil in there is all pretty standard as well. But things just kind of add up. The seal at the bottom here, for instance, this is 30 euros. It's one of those things where at what point do you call it? At what point do you say, I'm just sort of throwing money at this? It's getting harder and harder to find things. Some of these parts, even though I can see a price for them, are still showing as out of stock. It's just like, and I think our customer agreed, and looking at the comments from the first video, a lot of you agreed as well. Just put it back together, have it as an ornament if you want to keep the bike original, but don't throw any more money at that. Fox RockShox, on the other hand, we can generally get parts easily for at least a decade in my experience of that. So it's a real shame, but I just feel like this isn't really worth pursuing. You don't gain anything from it. If you ever are going to do this, by the way, you are going to need this little Cannondale tool. This will get you into the top, and you're also going to need a really, really long spark plug tool to get into the nuts at the bottom. But we're going to give up on that. We're going to put it back together again loosely, and if the whole situation with stock of Lefty spares in the UK ever changes, we might revisit it. All right, back to the frame. Talking of which, it looks like we have had a delivery. We're going to go for a standard bottom bracket and a new DT Swiss. We don't need the rear one, but the front one was on offer if you brought the rear one with it, and we'll sort the rear one out at some point, I'm sure. So we're just going for the standard SRAM bottom bracket for this because it's plastic, essentially. What I want to do is make sure that we are protecting that crankset from any sort of further damage. So these actually have a plastic top cap in here. So hopefully the plastic parts of this won't do any more damage to that. Also plastic outer as well. They'll be much easier to replace, especially if this is obviously being ridden in a really corrosive environment. It will just be plastic against carbon. There's nothing there that's going to corrode. So nothing too fancy, keeping things basic and easy to maintain for the future. Now, loads of you came up with like various ideas for like forks on this. And yes, you can get forks at all sorts of prices. But the thing is, this is a race bike, high performance race bike, and customer really wanted to maintain that lockout experience. You know, they have the dual lockout and keep it as top end as they possibly could. So these are the Fox 34s. Now, these are normally almost a 1,400 quid, I think like 13.99 retail. These are just coming into clearance sales, and we've picked these up for just a little over 800 quid. Absolutely fantastic set of forks. The reason we've gone for the 34s rather than the 32s. The 32s are only marginally lighter, like the tiniest little bit, but you get so much more stiffness out of the 34s. And these are the step cast version as well, so they're taking a big chunk of material out the bottom of these. And yeah, they're so lovely and light. For a service centre like us, they're an absolute dream to work on. You know, the guys at Silverfish really, really are good at stocking all of these and getting things out to us next day delivery as well. So if you've got a set of these, walk into good service centres, and they know exactly what they're doing this for, you know, years and years to come. I think they're going to look pretty smart. Okay, we need to do one more thing, and that's remove this bearing and then do a really, really good frame inspection. Now, there's not an awful lot of room behind here, so it's not quite blind, but you can't really get onto the outer edge of the bearing at all. So I'm actually going to use a slide hammer with this, I think, and try and carefully bring it out. It's going to be difficult to get an extractor kit from like on there because there's hardly any surface area to work with. So this is a slide hammer tool from Enduro. We really like these because edges of these are so sharp, and when we're dealing with quite small bearings, it really does help. So now I've got one side out, I can actually use a bearing extractor on this side. And you can see you get a really good fit with this tool, so you can keep everything solid. And just see how small those bearings are carrying all of that load, all in the pursuit of saving a few grams of headline weight. Time to give this a right good clean up and then a really thorough frame inspection. Make sure we know exactly what we're working with. Okay, thanks to Dan to clean up all the frame, and now we can get a really, really good look at everything. And it is actually in remarkably good condition. I really can't see any evidence of really paint cracking even, apart from this little bit around here where the corrosion of the aluminium part has lifted it. All the threads are in great condition, considering it is, generally speaking, actually in really, really good condition, and definitely worth saving. The main triangle, exactly the same. My main areas of concern around the bottom bracket, this is actually all cleaned up very, very well. There's a little bit of corrosion here that we're just going to polish out, but that's no big deal. All the points where you expect to might see a crack, all looks fantastic. Really happy that we can save this frame and bring it back to its former glory. So what have we learned from our exploratory session today? Well, one, we kind of knew that we were going to have to replace the pivots. I think it was fairly obvious from visual inspection that the actual pivot bolts were going to need replacing. These are about 30 quid, as that was expected. This was a bit unexpected, sadly, but I think it's actually probably for the best. And actual fact, the bearings to replace these are about a tenner each, and the piece actually comes with some bearings. So I don't think that's a massive difference in price just to replace that whole thing. And it's a bit of peace of mind as well, because it's a brand new one and they are prone to failure. So I think in all, we are full steam ahead. The customer's pretty much given their go ahead. We've got those components in I showed you earlier, knowing that we can send them back if the customer changed their mind after this. We're just dead keen to secure that stock. So I think from here on in, we are just a couple of Cannondale bits, some SRAM bits, and the next video, part 3, the conclusion, build it and make it perfect. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please think about giving it a thumbs up, subscribe, make sure you're notified when part 3 is ready to go, and part 3 will be the finale of this little season. Do hope you're enjoying it. Take it easy.